Yes, everyone, welcome back to the IrishHotspur. We are back with another weekly panel show for all of you, and it's a big precursor, big pre-match preview, and an extent for a massive game tomorrow against Crystal Palace. We'll be talking about the team selection, the lineup that Igor Tudor we feel like kind of must go for, knowing that it is a massive game for us. And if we were to pick up 3 points, we were just chatting in the background, maybe, just maybe, that could be the catalyst for them to start believing in each other again, believe in themselves, to try to get themselves as far away from this relegation battle as possible. We have some other bits and pieces, of course, around certain Spurs scout, I guess being a massive Arsenal fan and in a way almost adding to the many a crazy and bizarre stories that we've seen around Spurs this season. And also just we're going to be asking the boys, since we only get to chat to them about once a week, just around their thoughts around the last game that we witnessed under Igor Tudor against Fulham. I'm going to welcome some people in the chat, and we will get the show underway just also as well. Make the best use of these guys' time tonight because, as always, everybody, they take times out of their week. They take times out of their respective evenings to come on and chat the absolute roller coaster and bizarre club that is Tottenham Hotspur, which is not an easy thing to do. Shem Tan, good to see you in the house. Hey, Jack and Dave. Hope you're both well today. Doing the best we can, Shem. And then K32, Kieran's in the house saying, hi, Dave and Jack and everyone. Hope you are well. Watch Wolves play their hearts out last night and saw what a win meant to the players, managers, and the fans. Where's our fight from the players? It did make me think that I'm pretty sure in Rob Edwards' case is that he is actually a former Wolves player. I did wonder, if that is kind of the benefit sometimes of bringing in a manager that might actually have that experience playing for the club. They know what it means to fight for that badge. They know what it means to be in these types of situations. And I wonder if Rob Edwards was, in a way, kind of the perfect choice for a team like Wolves. Not saying that that type of person was available for us. Maybe we just were saying that kind of before Igor Tudor was hired, that any of the candidates that maybe do know what it's like to either manage or play for Spurs in the past, not a lot of them really were the best of candidates, let's just say. Whereas in Rob Edwards' case, almost kind of a perfect one, if you ask me. Dennis Daly, good to see you in the house as well. Appreciate your support, as well as Looper Cal saying he's terrified for tomorrow. I think a lot of us are. In a way, it's not the sexiest game on paper, but it is absolutely massive for us tomorrow, Looper Cal. So get ready, clear your evenings for whatever misery or celebration that we end up having for it. But we're going to get this show underway. We're just going to kind of catch up with Colin and Jack here. And I'll go to you first on this one, Jack, since we only really speak to you about once a week. Just give me your quick thoughts on the Fulham game. Did you expect more from that performance and more? Did you go into it with any expectation that Spurs could get something? And then if you do have time for it, just your opinion on the first goal and how controversial that might have been. Was it a foul for you? Could it maybe have been a different result if that was disallowed? Just a two-parter.
Okay, perfect. To be honest, I felt relatively optimistic going into it sort of throughout the week. And then I made the mistake of, I said, you know what, I was at the Arsenal match. So you get a different sort of view of the game. You've had a few drinks and all. And I was like, I'll give the first half a watch back. And that kind of took a bit of my confidence away. I thought that the first half was better when I was there than what it actually was in reality. I thought we were lucky not to be a good few goals behind. So I was a bit pessimistic kind of going into the game, but it was actually somehow worse than what I thought it was going to be, to be honest. We looked sort of disorganized. I thought that aggressive man-to-man press that Tudor sort of did, where every single player took up a man, including the centre backs, ended up in situations where Gray is up front, Dragusin is in midfield tracking a runner, and it just ends up a total mess. And if players don't have full buy into it, which I think you can kind of see some guys, they're questioning whether sometimes they should stay or they should go, whether they track their runner or whatever. It looked like a mess. And I thought some of the disorganization, out of possession in the first half, we looked kind of passive and like we didn't know what to do. Second half, you're chasing a goal and they looked like they had no idea how to win the ball back. And when they did get the ball, they just couldn't keep it, to be honest. And like, I know guys like Paulinho and Gallagher, people love like the sort of heart and stuff that they show, but those two guys are like a black hole for possession. They add so little in terms of passing ability, carrying ability. I remember at one point Gallagher got the ball out on the right, which why he was playing right wing back or right mid or whatever position he's played, I find bizarre. He picked the ball up, ran backwards about 30 yards, then turned back inside and passed it sideways. And I thought that kind of summed up his performance. And then Paulinho tackling thin air when he was under no pressure. He decided to slide tackle the ball with no Fulham player within 10 yards. So I thought that kind of summed his performance up. And I thought the setup by Tudor, I thought was just totally wrong. I don't really understand why Gray was being used as some sort of left wing back while Gallagher was used as a right wing back, with Porro, who's probably our only good player with the good delivery, was kind of sitting back, nearly playing that sort of quarterback role, trying to dictate things from deep. So I thought the whole thing was just a mess, really. And I thought the only positivity was maybe seeing Tel and Sousa link up. I thought they linked up quite well, even if they're not perfect. They're fairly raw players. I thought they worked well down the left hand side, particularly for the goal. I thought Tel dragged it maybe 25 yards up the pitch and then hit it to Archie Gray, who put in a nice cross. And then Sousa won a couple of corners from the two of them linking up, which could have come to something. I think Leno dealt with them fairly well. And then, yeah, I thought that was kind of about all the positives we could have. I thought we were fairly poor and passive other than that. But yeah, that fell on Dragusin. That was just ridiculous. Like, it was so frustrating when you see the week before Kolo Muani's goal disallowed. Like, we've had such inconsistency against us. Seems no matter what way whether it's us defending or us attacking, the decision just goes against us. Bentancur's had a penalty given against him for grappling in the box this season. Romero was shoved by Ekitike while he was actually in the air, which, out of all the decisions, I thought that was the worst. I just don't think there's a scenario where that's not a foul. Then you have the last week where you had Kolo Muani basically place two hands on Gabriel's back and he throws himself to ground. And then you have Dragusin, who was about to jump, gets two hands on his back, and next thing you know, then he can't head the ball away. I don't think there was much threat really involved in that. And then even going back to last season, where Gabriel once again shoved Romero from a corner when Arsenal beat us 1-0, and that goes against us as well. So it just seems, regardless of the scenario, on top of that, Vicario, the amount of times he's been felled from set pieces, it's just a total joke that these things always seem to go against us. And I'm not someone who's like, oh, there's a conspiracy with referees, and I still don't think we would have picked much up from any of these games if those decisions had gone our way. But it feels totally unfair, and in a period where we're really struggling to get anything, to have the referees then against you on top of that, it makes life so difficult, I think.
And for you, Colin, any conclusions that you can take from the Fulham game before we dissect more into it, since we only speak to you once a week?
Thanks for having me back. I didn't see the game. Oh, terrible Spurs fan. I was actually travelling on my way back from trying to drink Glasgow dry on a stag night. So I watched as much of it as I could.
Jealous.
As I was travelling. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a better time than Tottenham.
Yeah, you didn't miss much then.
Yeah, I didn't miss much. Bit of a dour town, Glasgow, and not helped by the weather, but fabulous pubs and people. So saw what I could between airports and taxis and whatever else. Watched the highlights then when I could as well. There's nothing as erudite that I can come up with that Jack hasn't already touched on. What an incredible synopsis he's opened the show with there, and hats off to him. But just to echo most of that, it looked to me like we were pretty rubbish in the first half. Structure seemed all wrong. Players out of position. Slightly better in the second half. Pulling my hair out about that decision, and whether it is or it isn't a foul, I'm not really that fussed. And I see some people in the chat and some people in other forums saying it is a foul, it isn't a foul. I don't really care. I just want consistency. I cannot stand the fact that it's one day it is and one day it isn't. Right. Don't even get me started about, and it's the hill I'll still die on, the Romero red card. And I know he's leaving a bit on, but there's been far worse tackles than that since and prior that just simply don't get looked at. So it's just the consistency that would drive you insane. To take a slightly negative view, I don't really see much of an improvement. I don't see any new manager bounce. I don't necessarily agree that, Arsenal is a free hit. It's still 11 men against 11 men. Didn't see too much to encourage me there. Didn't see too much to encourage me against Fulham. So I'm hoping we start to see something a little bit more cohesive. I still think we can't underplay how bad the injury situation is, not to keep turning that record all the time, but it is a reality and a harsh reality of where we are. And just I was watching your stream yesterday, or your broadcast yesterday, and where you were talking about goals being given or not being given. The fact is that with these poor decisions or the inconsistencies or whatever you want to call them, goals change games. You can win and play badly. I'm not saying it's the ultimate reason why we're losing. Certainly not. We're terrible, and have been for quite some time. But goals change games. Being given against you or taken away from you, you don't know what that does. You know, in terms of, yes, I know that Fulham had, certainly from the highlights, they looked like they had 5 or 6 opportunities that they didn't capitalize upon. So like 2-1 is actually a little bit flattering to us, but you don't know if they don't score that opener where we go from there.
Right.
You know, and it's your mentality. You're just thinking, here we go again. All the heads go down, all the usual. But yeah, it's I don't. I'm not feeling that optimistic just yet. I still don't think we'll necessarily go down. I think there's too many games to play. We'll get a win from somewhere, and then things will start to look rosy in the garden. But we are surviving by the skin of our teeth because of other results around us.
I think you're right that, especially when you're a fragile team like ourselves, a goal conceded that early on in a game, and especially it being another very controversial one that the referee is involved in, it does have impact on momentum, your confidence, and it just exposes, right, the fragility that we've seen from these players. So I think you are right, and that was also, I'm glad that you answered that part of the question, because I did kind of wonder, who's to know? Maybe there would have been a slightly different result had that just been disallowed. Maybe Spurs going to halftime 0-0 or something like that, not 2-0 down if that was actually disallowed. Who's to know? But you're right. I mean, goals do play a massive part in the mentality of either side, even if they're confident or not confident.
Well, you could see what it did for Fulham.
Seriously, especially inside 10 minutes. Always, always, you know, team scoring that are the home side scoring within the first 10 minutes. It does massive boost for both the fans as well as the players. But since you didn't get to watch the game as much, Colin, maybe I'll throw this one at you. As much as the players have continued to put in shocking performances throughout this season, isn't it also up to Igor Tudor to get the team selection right? Because he did play Conor Gallagher as a weird auxiliary right winger, but it clearly did not work. And he's been brought in for a short time, not a long time. So that means then he has to quickly turn things around and help save us from this relegation battle. So doesn't he bear some responsibility for the fact that he is being brought in to turn things around very quickly? And if he's getting the team selection wrong and the formations wrong, then he does bear some responsibility for the loss against Fulham, right?
I think he bears a lot of it. You know, I was trying to be very mathematical and precise and say, he's more than half of the blame. Certainly, I'll give him a pass in respect of, let's see what happens in the Crystal Palace match. But in my humble opinion, when you've got a group that's clearly as low as they are in confidence, giving guys roles to play a football match in that they're not comfortable in or not used to, it's counterproductive in my opinion. You should be making everybody as comfortable as possible. So I don't know, unless you're in his head, you can't figure out why he did what he did. Perhaps he's thinking to himself, I suppose the shape that we had against Arsenal didn't really work, and we were beaten. Let's try something new. And so if he's tried something new and it's failed, and it was a little bit better in the second half, but he does something different again for Crystal Palace, then I'm kind of okay with that, because he has to learn. This is only his second game. He's only there X number of weeks. But if he rocks out the same team again in the same formation, then, I mean, he mightn't be the one to save us, because I was very, very disappointed with some of the choices and the structure of the team. And I'm not really sure, when a team is low on confidence, that man-to-man is the way to go. And maybe Jack might be better at answering it than I am, but it certainly felt, even from the highlights, that Fulham were clever enough to pull us apart and create space in the middle, because they knew that these guys were just going to run and run and run with whatever player they were assigned to. So that then, to me, leads to a lot of chaos positionally. And then if you're not used to playing in that position, or you don't have the skill, I mean, Conor Gallagher, he's a good player, but he's no winger. Can't beat his man. You know, Xavi on the other side, still adjusting to the Premier League, has been clearly most effective in the middle and isn't in the middle. Just a lot of frustrating decisions like that. And every moment I see Archie Gray on the pitch, my heart breaks a little, because I just think we've failed that young man who, in my opinion, was looking like, and Bergvall too, potentially a generational talent. And we've just been sticking him in every corner of the pitch that we can, it's just plasters everywhere, fill in here, fill in there. And of course, that's a testament to his ability and his skill. But it's not doing much for his development. He's 2 years behind his development now, like in a completely unstable team, unstable team, and an unstable environment. Lots of changes at the top, lots of changes in the middle, lots of changes in managers. So yeah, frustrating. So basically, yeah, I don't know how I got onto that, but yeah, Tudor is to blame. But he gets a pass until the next match.
I mean, Dave, you and I were, and then I'll get Jack's thoughts on this, but finally to let you in here, you and I were debating how I frame this question, because you and I have heard plenty of times, and probably as well have said it ourselves, that the players have continually let themselves down, have put in shocking performances. But it also, as a coach, it's up to you as well to take some responsibility in how you set them up, how you pick them to potentially succeed and be able to excel. And Igor Tudor just simply got it wrong in terms of the team selection and the formation. So it's not like he gets a free pass or anything like that. Like, he has to be able to figure out what's best for this team in order to get us out of this position. And you would say so far he's not been able to do that.
Well, that's the thing. I think in an ideal situation, you probably give a manager 4 or 5 games, let him find his team and, his preferred lineup and stuff like that. But we don't have this time. And the whole reason why he was brought in is because he's used to bringing in instant success, or an injection of success or like positivity and getting results into clubs midway through the season or towards the end of the season. And, there's only so many opportunities we can give him where he gets it wrong. Like, for me, you can't come in and preach about fitness and running and then start Conor Gallagher, who's unfit, and it's almost like as well that, some of these managers are like overcomplicating things. Archie Gray at left back against Fulham was never going to work. Especially going in terms of going forward. It was never going to work, because our right foot on the left-hand side is constantly looking to put the ball back inside, back into trouble and stuff like that, rather than progress it. You see the impact Sousa had when he came on in terms of how direct we were down that side, how much better we look going forward. Then you also look into Radu Dragosin at centre-back. The guy is directly costing you goals in big moments in games. He's been at fault for 1 goal nearly every game he's played since he's come back. Yet he continues to pick him. At some point, in order to get quick success, unfortunately, where we are, you get your opportunity, you don't take it, you're back out, the next guy's in until your opportunity comes back around again. And that's the way it should be. He doesn't have time to sit there and wait for players to perform. And to be fair to the guy, though, I think you can sort of see that. The first game he came out and questioned the ambition of the club. The last game he came out and said, question the players' basically desire and hunger by saying they can't run, they can't defend, they can't attack, and he's put them on blast. So I think he realizes he needs that sort of instant impact. But then by him putting them on blast, it also sort of opens up the question. Has he already lost the dressing room? The fact that he's having to come out and put them on blast like that, because usually putting players on blast in the public is usually their last resort to try and get something out of them. And that's where my concern comes in, that maybe they're not having them. But, I feel sorry for Tudor to a certain degree, because he's come in, he's tried everywhere else he's been, what he's done is work, but he's just not getting a response out of these players here at the minute. And to be honest with you, I know what Jamie Harris said on Sky Sports, and I know we're going to get onto it. But if he doesn't get the lineup right against Palace, and fans look at it almost thinking, "Oh, that's wrong," like Thomas Frank done many times before the game, then he's on a short leash between now and the end of the season. And he'll leave the board with no option but to roll the dice again. We don't have time to sit here and wait for him to get things right. He has to be able to replicate what he's done at every other club. And the one thing I warned when we signed this guy was, we're hoping he can do what he's done at every other club. But the reality is, look how many managers have come here like Jose, Conte, and haven't been able to replicate what they've done at other clubs. And I just hope, that this isn't the anomaly on his CV, but it looks like it will be. And for me, don't get me wrong, he's not helping the situation, by getting the lineups wrong. But there's nowhere for these players to hide now. We've had a change in manager at the end of the day. And usually every other club that changes manager, and even when we've done it before, you see that manager bounce. You almost see, the players spring to life. We haven't seen that. And when it's multiple managers across the one season, at some point, then you do have to start questioning, these players in terms of what do they actually want to manage them? Is it a case where they just want to manage themselves? It seems like Thomas Frank, they want to tell him how to try and play. Same under Ange Postecoglou. No doubt they're going to try and do the same to Tudor. At some point, you have to look beyond the dugout. And, there's only and I've said this as well when we signed Tudor. He can come in and he can implement try to implement what he wants to do. But unless you've got players in the dressing room, or at least 3 or 4 players in that dressing room that are willing to fight for you, you're absolutely fucked. And name me 3 or 4 players in that Spurs squad right now that people can look at and go, do you know what? A manager can come in and rely on him to drag people along with him and do the right things and, at least put in what he's looking for in games. We don't. People are coming back to Richarlison now, a player that everyone has wanted sold nearly every single other transfer window. That's how bad it is. So, it's not all on Tudor. At some point, these players have to step up and be counted.
Just to qualify that as well, Dave, the thought just hit me. You might not get a new manager bounce in an environment where we just simply have so many of our first team out. So you could actually be very close to the ceiling of the performance. It was just a thought. I'm not saying that this is actually what's happening, but just as a thought, in other environments where he's gone in, you've got an underperforming, very capable team, and he goes in, and you've still, you've gone in and you're working with the first 11, whereas we've got an underperforming, potentially capable team. We've never actually seen them perform because we've got just so many A-listers out. And then, of course, Richarlison looks like a world beater because he has the quality we want when we're struggling, which is fight. And when we're not struggling, he just looks like a donkey because he doesn't suit, like a free-flowing, forward-thinking, attacking squad because he's just a bit cumbersome. But in this environment, he's perfect. That's why everyone loves him at the moment. Sorry, that was just a train of consciousness.
What I will say quickly about Tudor as well is, in fairness, in both games, he hasn't been afraid to make substitutions early in the second half. He hasn't sat there like maybe Ange Postecoglou or Thomas Frank did to 80 minutes before making a change, even though everyone's screaming at their tellies, knowing that things are going wrong and stuff like that. So in fairness to him, and what I will say is I'd argue, I don't think he has been helped by the referees in the last couple of games. In terms of the decisions. You look at that disallowed goal in the North London derby. We get into that. All of a sudden, the game changes. Momentum's on our side. The crowd is up. There's belief. All of a sudden, Arsenal then get a bit leggy. The legs get like jelly. Changes the game. So I don't think he's been helped by that decision in that regard because as soon as that decision went against us, we collapsed. You look at the Fulham game.
Same.
It should be a free kick out based on the letter of the law the week before. Didn't happen. All of a sudden, you're 1-0 down. You find yourself 2-0 down. We collapse off the back of a refereeing decision. So I don't think he's been helped in-game by the refereeing decisions that have gone on either, which is leading to him being put under pressure right away, even though he's only in the job.
And Jack, anything to add to Igor Tudor's responsibility in having the right formation, picking the right players? Because we need him to be able to figure out as quickly as possible if we stand any chance of surviving this relegation battle. And to be honest, you could say against Arsenal and as well as against Fulham, he's probably gotten the team selection wrong and maybe even the formations wrong.
Yeah, I think what I would say about him is I think he's looked very poor tactically so far, but I still have that sort of bit of faith in him as a motivator, which ultimately I think if he can get those players believing in themselves, I know there's been a lot of talk over them not caring really, but I think it's just more their confidence is on the floor. Like they've had Thomas Frank essentially tell them all season, "You're rubbish. This is your level."
Yeah.
And
Arsenal is such a great team, lads.
Sorry,
Arsenal is such a great team, lads.
Yeah. So I can't imagine how you'd feel going into every game because every game you lose, it's harder than to win the next one. Like we're going on nearly 2.5 months without winning a league game. Like it becomes very, very difficult. I know Jack Pitbrook in The Athletic wrote an article, "Have Tottenham forgotten how to win?" And I think that just summed our argument up perfectly. It's not that we've gotten used to losing, it's actually that we've no idea how to win a game. Because I think even if you lose 4 out of 5, if you win that other one, I think you just have that bit of belief still in there. But I just think even those games we've drawn, we've just not gotten over the line a single one of them. And I think that's really been the killer because it's not always the 3 points. Sometimes just the feeling of coming off the pitch victorious. It just really allows you to kind of go again to the next game and then say, well, we had maybe 2 rough games, but we still won there 3 games ago. But it was so long since they've won a game in the league. I just think they go out onto the pitch and they're nearly beaten before they start. But
to your point, Jack, on that, like everyone, if you're in that dressing room, you almost feel like everyone's against you. You feel like the fans are against you because, you know, they're quickly to turn on you every single game. But fans, again, feel like they have the right. You know, you feel like the board are against you by judging, you know, the lack of urgency or the lack of players coming in here to help the situation in terms of January. You know, the media and the pundits are already against you, and you're already going into games feeling like you're going to be on the wrong end of a refereeing decision. So, you know, they just feel like the whole world is against them right now.
Yeah, but that then goes back to mentality for me, because I've been in plenty of those situations where you feel I'm going to prove people wrong or I'm going to give up and walk away. And I think we've got too many, I'm going to give up and walk away. This is too hard.
Yeah, maybe,
right?
I think for all the criticism Romero's gotten this season, I think he is that character you want. He's dragged us through some of those games with his goals. The Newcastle away, Burnley, Dortmund.
He kept Frank in a job.
Yeah, he kept Frank in the job, really, which ultimately might end up getting us relegated. The fact that Frank was allowed to stay that long, I think that's ultimately what it comes back to. If we'd sacked Frank after, I wanted him gone after the Arsenal game, but the Forest game, I think that was like you had to sack him then. That was an appalling performance. That was before the injuries had built up as well. So I just think that was inexcusable. I just think it went way too far, and I think it's maybe a situation where it's too difficult to turn it around. But I think he does need to do better tactically. He should have a look at what Carrick did at United. Came in, put Bruno Fernandes in the number 10, in his best position. He's now arguably the most informed player in the Premier League. He got Kobe Minu back into the team and he went to a back 4. Like sometimes it's just a simple solution. The obvious
players
solution
in the right positions.
Yeah, just
then like, get them to believe again.
Yeah, literally. And all it takes is just little moments in games where you go, oh, we can actually play. Like, there was just moments in that Fulham game where I was like, Tel and Sousa linking up. It's like, okay, maybe we have something here. Neither of them they're both very raw players. They're not perfect. They're both, I think Tel's 20, I think Sousa's 19. Sousa's only played a handful of games at sort of this level. He's playing in Brazil before, which is just obviously nowhere near the Premier League. But you'd be amazed the snowball effect that just one good performance would have, or even one well-worked team goal might have. If we go 1-0 up against Palace and it's a really well-worked goal, the players go, oh, maybe these ideas the manager's given us are actually working and this is what we can work with. And I think that's maybe getting Tel and Sousa into the team. They're guys that haven't maybe been out on the pitch in these games we've been losing. I know Tel's come on a lot of them, but he's not really been out there for 90 minutes as we've been getting beaten. And he looks like someone who's not got shattered confidence. I just think getting those guys back in is kind of an important thing, and just simplifying things, really. I just think that's the main thing we need to do. I don't think he needs to go with a complicated system. Just get players playing their best positions and let that work out itself. I think the way you use Xavi and Gallagher, as Colin said, I just think it's just absolutely bizarre, to be honest. And I think, as you said as well, Graham Bergwell, how they've been used this season, how Tel and Odegaard were used, the fact that probably those two groups of players were both signed within sort of 6 months of each other. Like maybe you sign one of them and then you sign a senior player. That just comes back to the squad building again, which obviously we've talked about plenty of times. I just think the squad building has just been a total mess, which has ultimately led to us sleepwalking into this situation. But yeah, I think if he just implements a simple system, gets a bit of confidence back in, gets the players believing in themselves, I think one good result could maybe turn this around. But
he doesn't seem like that guy, though, Jack, though, does he? In terms of, you know, being a motivator, he seems more like a guy that, like, you know, you do what I'm telling you to do, rather than sort of motivate them. And the fact that he's already called out the players,
yeah,
you know, it is sort of like the manager's last straw to a certain degree. So I don't think he's one that's going to come in and fluff their pillows up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think he has that fire though, which I think could go possibly a long way. Like you saw Frank was so defeatist. I think he has that bit of fire that someone like Ange or Pochettino or Conte or Mourinho had, where you can get one-off performances from players. Like you can't do the sort of punch in the wall in the changing rooms before every game. But if you know when to do it, you can get a reaction out of it, and it can go a long way to getting your results. And I'm just going to say one last thing on him. I cannot believe we're still seeing these long throw-ins with Thomas Frank gone. I thought Thomas Frank being sacked was the end of them, and seeing them still going against Fulham with Dragons and taking them made my blood boil. I hate them. They don't work. We are terrible at them. And the sooner they're gone, the better, because they're a total waste of time and they kill any momentum we build in games. And I couldn't tell you last time we actually created a chance from one.
But they fluff up the box entries, though, at the end of the game. You know, they make it look like we've entered the opposition box more than what we have done.
It's just stat pad.
Yeah, I don't see why you don't just... Yeah, just get Dragons in our dance, so just throw backwards to Porro and let him lump the ball in. I cannot imagine that would have a worse result.
But
even
the delivery's better.
Sorry?
The delivery's better from a Porro cross than it is from a throw.
Yeah, definitely. Fair enough that you're at Brentford, your man Coyote can throw the ball about 300 metres, but throw-ins don't go that far. And even when they do, no one gets the first contact.
And there's no pace in the ball. You can't do anything with it.
Yeah, it's always the second contact you have to get. But sure, we don't even beat the front post. Like,
nope.
I don't know. I just don't get it. I don't know how they're still doing it, to be honest.
It is pretty funny how massive Dragishin is, yet he can seem to only really throw it about 5 meters or 10 meters in comparison to Coyote. It's just he's just a big tall guy. He doesn't really seem to actually have as much strength as we all thought. Just want to welcome in some members of the channel. Do really appreciate you guys tuning in and joining us this evening. Of course, before our massive game tomorrow, Tom is in the house. Good to see you, Tom. Hopefully everything's good with you. K32 saying Tudor could do a Conte tomorrow night if we end up losing. I think someone mentioned that earlier on this week. Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
Paul Brown saying there weren't too many highlights, to be fair, Colin.
Paul
Brown. Tartan Spurs, Glasgow is the greatest city in Europe. Man up in Scotland. Good to have you, sir. We also
it was over the weekend.
And then as well as Tyler saying if the players don't care, what the FSC is supposed to do. To be fair, Tyler, Ange Postecoglou got them to care towards the end of last season when it came to the Europa League. Also in the beginning of the season, it seemed like they cared. You know, they were trying to win games. They were playing for Thomas Frank in the beginning. I think a lot of times it is just about how the manager sets them up, how he motivates them. And eventually, if things start to unravel where you are losing games and you feel like the manager isn't really helping you excel and exceed, you start to not really believe in what he's trying to do and how he's setting you up. And then all of a sudden, you know, you start to see performances slip and you start to see standards slip and you start to see the mentality slip. I feel like the players at some point did care. It's just now they're completely devoid of any confidence, mostly because of how the last manager set us up and how he kind of let the season continue to derail, really. But Igor Tudor, his job right now is to get them to care and probably, like Jack said, probably maybe end up bringing the hairdryer out or end up at punching a few holes in walls in order to actually get them to wake up to some extent. But even the Man United example is a perfect one, right? So many people accuse the players of not caring under Ruben Amorim. All of a sudden, and like a snap of a finger, when Michael Carrick comes in charge, they now look like they've been, you know, carrying all season and that they've been fighting for this team the whole time. So it's amazing what a manager can do if he gets things right, Tyler, in my opinion. Dropkick your teacher, good to have you as well. And then also Paolo Morati saying absolutely spot on. Jack, we're going to move on just maybe in terms of this whole maybe players caring thing and whether they were accused of that by the likes of Jamie O'Hara and Igor Tudor. Jamie O'Hara's comments on Sky Sports have set a high-stakes tone for tonight as he claimed Igor Tudor should be sacked if Tottenham failed to beat Crystal Palace. He described the current situation at the club as a farce and argued that Tudor's blunt public criticism of the players is in fact a risky business for a manager who has only been in the job for practically 2 games. Is O'Hara right to be that ruthless, Dave, after only 3 games? Should we consider Tudor's position if he ends up losing tomorrow night?
I think at some point you have to. Like we seen with Frank, you can't keep letting it go on if you're losing games. And where we are 4 points above relegation, I think at some point you have to. I think you're going to have to roll the dice again. Maybe not as soon as the Palace game, but I think Nottingham Forest game, certainly, if he doesn't pick up anything, you have to roll the dice then for the likes of Sunderland, Wolves and Leeds and games like that coming up. I think you can't keep persisting. We've seen with Thomas Frank. This is the whole reason why we're in this situation. They persist with Thomas Frank far too long, to the point now where this squad has absolutely no confidence, and anyone that's coming in to try and alleviate the situation is struggling to pick their confidence up off the floor. So you can't keep letting it go. At the end of the day, I think Tudor has made his last stance. You know, Conte, when he's going to have a Conte moment sooner or later. You know, he's a fiery character, and what you see with a lot of people that leave Tottenham Hotspur, especially managers, they dissolve themselves from all blame, and he'll be the next one in line that'll just go, look at my CV, look what I've done everywhere else. and look at Tottenham Hotspur, and you then you just point at what happened to Jose here, Conte here, etc. And he'll be absolved of all blame. But look, you just simply, where we are, you have to keep gambling until you get the right guy in. He's made his last stance by calling out the players. If he doesn't get a reaction, then the board are going to have to look at maybe a Team Sherwood and a Harry Redknapp duo or something like that, good cop, bad cop, and see what you can get going from that. Because at the end of the day, you can't just sleepwalk into relegation, unfortunately.
And to you on this one, Colin, I mean, should Tudor's position be reconsidered if he does end up losing tomorrow? Do we have to think that short term?
In my opinion, no, but it obviously puts another nail in the coffin. I'm not in the mood for another suck it and see, and neither should the board. 3 is too short to have an impact or a meaningful impact, in my opinion, particularly since the first one is, I'm not excusing it, but it is against a very difficult team to play against, which is Arsenal, which is why I'm saying, the experimentation for Fulham, he gets a bit of a pass from me, unless you see the same rubbish again in terms of squad selection and structure against Palace, which then leads to a defeat. Then I think serious questions will be asked. You probably give him one more game after that to see, has he learned and been able to turn it around. But I think if the board have learned anything from Thomas Frank's tenure, is not to wait. And I said it on this stream when I was asked about the transfer window, and I said it was a -11, just to get the old joke in there as well. I absolutely stand by that. It was critical then, and Johan Lange or whoever is responsible at the club, it didn't matter that there weren't players of the right caliber or whatever. You needed bodies, you needed short-term contracts, you needed whatever was needed to get the club facing in the right direction. And we've just left ourselves so exposed. Yeah, that Tudor could be the next victim of that. And perhaps nothing happens positively until we start getting our players back. Who knows? But yeah, I think if we lose to Crystal Palace, the manner of which we lose will determine for me whether or not he should go.
Is it just moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic, Jack, if we were to sack Igor Tudor? Or do you have to think about it this way, where if he isn't able to get a win in 3 games, and arguably 2 out of 3 of them being decent games to potentially get some points from, if he's not able to get any sort of turnaround and manager bounce in 3 games, then do we have to reconsider?
I think I'm very much in the same boat as Colin. I think he made some very good points just about the injured players coming back. I think it's the big thing. But I think if there's red flags there before the injured players come back, as in if we're still having this conversation after Palace, Liverpool, and Forest, I think is Forest before the international break. I think it is, isn't it?
Verify that for you, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
it is,
22nd. I think that's just before the international break. Yeah. I think if we're still in this situation after the Forest game and he hasn't won a game yet, I think you seriously have to consider changing your mind. But at the same time, short of disaster tomorrow night and disaster at Anfield, I don't think it should be the play before the international break, because I think there is enough fixtures in that sort of post-international run in the 6 weeks there. We have Wolves, Sunderland, who hopefully Wolves will have sort of packed it in by then. I know they've had a resurgence now. Sunderland, I think, hit 40 points last night, so fingers crossed they'll be on the beach. Brighton at home, they're kind of near enough with us. I think there's a couple of other favourable fixtures in there. So I think there is time to rectify the situation after these next few games, but we have to make sure we're going into it with the right manager, because if the injured players come back and he's still making mental, tactical decisions, it's just going to be too late if we sack him then. I just think we can't leave ourselves in a situation where it's too late. The reality is, we can look at West Ham and Forest, how they go every single week. The reality is, if we play anywhere close to our capabilities, it doesn't matter what they do, we'll get out of trouble. But if we can't win a game, they don't have to get very many points to get above us. So I think it is largely dependent on us, and we do have enough of a buffer whereby worst case scenario, I think realistic worst case scenario is maybe we go into the international break in the relegation zone, but 1 or 2 points behind the teams above us. So it is still salvageable, but time isn't really on our side and there's no more messing around. So I think the international breaks where I'll call kind of the cutoff for where I'm really going to start questioning him, unless he continues with Conor Gallagher on the right and whatever other nonsense he's going to do. I think he has to learn from it. And I think the way he spoke about Sousa today, I saw some quotes from the press conference. I think he was positive on him, said he liked what he saw. So I'm hoping to maybe see him tomorrow. If it's simple as just get a back three and let him play left wing back, nearly Van de Ven be sort of a left back in possession, and let Sousa bomb on. So even if he does have a disaster defensively, you can just deal with it now. Van de Ven's there to sweep up, because as disappointing as Van de Ven's been recently, he's still a top class player. And I think you can sort of mitigate for that lack of defensive awareness Sousa might have, just to get an actual left footer on the left hand side. And I just think it's simple stuff like that. If you can get those small wins, I think once the injured players come back, I think it makes his job a lot more straightforward. Just get the best players on the pitch and in the right positions, and I would back him then to get us out of trouble. But if he keeps going with this rubbish of playing guys all over the place to try and shoehorn players into our system, like, one thing I didn't mention was Tel at left back against Arsenal when we were chasing him. I just thought it was totally bizarre. The fella looked like he hadn't even practiced a throw in before, and Tudor decided to throw him on at left wing back. There was 1 or 2 of them where I was like, that's definitely a foul throw, and the refs let him off because it's 3-1 here. But like, it's stuff like that where it's like, he's clearly not tried something like that in training, which kind of concerns you a bit. But I just think keep it simple, and he will pick up results. If he tries to overcomplicate and shoehorn guys into his system, I get rid at the international break. And I know Dave said about Redknapp and Sherwood, I don't like the idea of that. I think both of them, if you're talking about being tactically inept, God knows what the word for the two of them be in the Premier League in 2026. I just think the level of the
Sherwood would disagree. He says he done good at Tottenham.
I mean, I didn't mind him when he was there. But Jesus,
no, did I?
Going back, I actually a couple of months over the Christmas, I was out with a few lads who came back, went to one of the lads' houses and watched the Man City QPR match last game of the season. And I was watching, I was like, geez, the tactical level here is nowhere near what it is now. I just think the organisation of teams, I think Harry Redknapp and Sherwood, the players would nearly openly laugh at them, I think. When Harry
Redknapp would have to come in as a 2. I think he's too old to really sort of fight the battle of relegation. He'd have to come in as number 2.
Yeah. I'd more pivot to Ryan Mason or something like that. To be honest, if we're going sort of they know the club route, that would be sort of my way to go. I know he didn't do the best at West Brom, but I heard some stuff that basically was just sort of in-game management he couldn't deal with, and there was a few games they got unlucky. And listen, he wasn't the best interim, but he kind of steadied the ship to an extent, and I think the players know him, the players like him, and I think that probably would be the way to go if we are going to move on from Tudor. But I thought Matt Wells feels like maybe one we might have missed out on. I saw Romero liked his Instagram post and I think gave him a congratulations on his first win in the MLS. Jack, what team is he's managing?
I think it's the Colorado Rapids.
Colorado Rapids, yeah. He seems like a really likable character, and I've heard from a few people that know guys who are in the academy that sung his praises and said he's a really good guy and a really good coach, and he'll have quite a decent career. So maybe he was the one, but that's too far gone now. I think just getting someone in that'll just get the players on side and believing in themselves again would be better than someone maybe like De Zerbi, who you might say is better tactically, but that could be just a situation where he calls the players rubbish after a game, and you're saying we need to switch it up again, and we're on to our 4th manager in 3 months, and probably on our way to the championship then. So I think it's a difficult situation to analyse, but fingers crossed it won't come to having to sack Tudor, because I think if he lasts the season, that means we've stayed in the Premier League, which is all that I care about right now.
Well, in Matt Wells' case, like, he did clearly care about the club and has a lot of love for the club, which is potentially what we've needed this whole time. But then also might have just missed the boat on him because he left, of course, while Thomas Frank was still in charge. Just 2 things that you did mention there, and this is kind of how I feel about it, and it might be harsh on Igor Tudor, but I think we've hopefully learned our lesson from just blindly giving a guy faith like we did with Thomas Frank. Like, he was given so many extra months that he probably didn't deserve. Like when you said the Forest game, the Arsenal game from before were clear signs that the players have stopped playing for him. They don't believe in what he's doing. And the fact that he just kind of looked inept, really, at being able to actually get this team, fighting and challenging on all levels like he was supposed to have done when he first got brought in here. But then the excuse that was always given to Thomas Frank was, oh, well, once he gets injured players back, like, for example, a Dominic Solanke, you'll see, the team really turn around. Didn't necessarily happen when he got guys like Solanke back. We still saw him just hoofing it long, and praying that he would be able to hold it up with 5-6 players around him and somehow be able to just perform a miracle, really. Like, there wasn't dramatic changes when even Thomas Frank got players back from injuries. So I think we need to avoid the same mistake of giving a guy just an unlimited amount of time to see if he can turn things around when there are clear signs that he's not able to do it. And then also as well, just the excuse of, which, I mean, it's a valid excuse at times of like injuries, but to say that somehow 1 or 2 players coming back is going to revolutionize the whole team and everything's just going to get better again. I think we learned our lesson with Frank that wasn't the case. And I don't think we can say the same thing of Igor Tudor. If he were to get some players back from injury, I don't think all of a sudden then we're just going to be playing liquid football again.
No.
But Igor Tudor, though, was asked about Mathys Tel, Colin, not starting. He says, I chose what I think in that moment was best for the team. It does not mean that he is not part of the first 11. Football changes in 5 minutes sometimes. Today, they are not substitutes because when you change half of the team, it is half of the team who's coming in and half who are coming out. It is a totally different view for the players, though, and sometimes it is difficult to understand this because everyone does want to start. What I recognize here, and especially in this league, though, is that there's a special game in the last 15 to 20 minutes of games. It is always a game within a game, and a lot of games have been decided in the last 20 minutes. Is Igor right to suggest, Colin, that substitutes play a different game to the ones that the starting players do? Are some players maybe better suited, like a Mathys Tel, as more of an impact substitution rather than a starter?
No, definitely. Mathys Tel. This is the alcohol from the weekend still eking out of me.
That's more efficient.
Tel, in my opinion, he's certainly a starter depending on the opposition, but equally he's quite effective at coming on for the last 20 minutes or whatever length of time, but only because I think he's a bit of an unknown quantity and maybe unreliable as to, if you wanted a game that was structured and you want to control the match in a certain way. Mathys Tel, I don't think, is the player you put on in order to do that, because I don't even think he knows what he's going to do. But for me, that's actually a bit of a positive, because anytime I see him do something unexpected, we score a goal from it. Whether that's like a cheeky backheel, which I think he's now done twice for Archie Gray, to cut one across, and we scored from, certainly I remember the one against Fulham from the weekend, but there was one before that, I'm nearly sure of it, that he's done a little cheeky ball. But yeah, Tudor is right. There are certain players that are suited to coming on and getting a job done for a specific window of time rather than the full 90 or 95 minutes. But Mathys Tel is another player I think has great heart, needed a good coach, needed leadership, needed a stable environment. But in order to maximize his potential, but hasn't had any of that at Spurs. But I like the cut of him, as we might say around these parts. He is a fighter, and you saw that when he was defending Ange in the crowd that time. He's got a big heart. So I'd like to see more of him personally, but I don't think he's playing anywhere near where he can play, and he needs a better, a more solid hand to guide him than what he's getting at the moment. But he certainly got screwed around by Frank being left into the squad, out of the squad for the Champions League and whatever else. I think he's a better player than what he's showing, or has a potentially high ceiling, but we're never going to recognize that. Pretty much like Gray and Bergvall and all our young players.
And to you, Jack, I mean, what do you make of the fact that he's saying the last 15, 20 minutes of a football match is like another game in itself, and that some players are better for that period? Is that an excuse that works with you for Mathys Tel not starting, or do you think he absolutely needs to start this next game?
I think I definitely would start him anyway, but I think it's kind of just a way of a manager framing something. I think maybe that is what some of those guys need, that just like where Frank might have said, oh, well, he's not training well enough, or I can only pick 11 players or something. He said, well, I've seen real value in this. And that probably gave Tel a bit of confidence to go, this guy has belief in me to like impact the game coming on the last 30 minutes, or I think he probably played nearly 40 minutes at the weekend. But it's just, I think it's just the way he frames it, just basically saying, listen, if you're not in the starting team, you still have an important role to play. You saw the role Kevin Danso played last season in the Europa League. Without starting the game, he was absolutely crucial to us getting to the final and actually holding on to the final. And I'm sure Ange, as a great motivator, was able to frame that to him, saying, you're going to come on these last 20 minutes. I need you. And Danso was probably coming onto the pitch absolutely pumped, ready to come on. I know the South African rugby team, they do something similar where guys nearly want to be on the bench to be the guys coming on making the impact because they make such a big deal of it, the way the mentality
bomb
of
squad.
it.
Now what they call it or something like that.
Yeah, the bomb squad. Tel's part of the bomb squad. Well, Tel is the bomb squad. He's the only forward on the bench.
Fortunately, the bomb is usually already exploded in the first half with Spurs.
Yeah,
and then he's more the bomb recovery.
Dragisson thinks it's at his feet whenever he gets the ball. But like I think it's just a way of framing it, and that's sort of some of those signs that I'm seeing from Tudor, where it's like maybe he can get a tune out with some of these players because I think he does have that sort of ability to get into the psyche of them that maybe Ange had as well, where you get them for one-off games to really sort of click for them, run those extra 5 yards from that maybe make the difference at the end of the game. Maybe they don't, but I think just making them feel valued. And going back to some of the points sort of Colin made, I think about him sort of being unpredictable. I think everyone talks about the lack of mavericks in football these days. Like the reality is with the Maverick, they're going to be wasteful a lot of the time, which Tel is. But there might be wasteful 6 or 7 times within a game, but it's the one time where they actually make something happen that people remember and they think back on 10 years. Do you remember where player X put the ball into the top corner? Like there was plenty of players like Haddon Ben Arfa. You still see his goals being played over and over again. Like he was totally inconsistent as a player, but he was an absolute joy to watch.
Sure.
And he could win a game on his own. And I think Tel maybe could become more refined, but he might just be that guy where he just comes on in a game and it's just electric for 20 minutes. And I think his technique on his shots is very good. I think we've seen him score that goal against United, lovely turn and shot. The Leeds game got the ball out of his feet very quickly and got a shot off. It was deflected, but he still did well. The Bournemouth game as well. That was a lovely one against Bournemouth. And I think it was one of the Champions League games against was it Sparta Prague we played, and I think he turned the defender inside out and hit a lovely shot. The keeper made an unbelievable save from him. So he has those sort of moments in his locker, and I think just having that sort of bravery and someone that's not going to let their head drop, maybe like some of those other players have, is just something that can be really, really valuable coming into these games. That I think people talk about scar tissue. I think Tel plays like someone who doesn't have scar tissue. Like he plays like someone who's fresh, he's brave. I remember people used to talk about Delhi like that, like he played with no fear. I think he's obviously not Delhi, but he plays with that sort of no fear. And I think he might not always do it for you, but he's someone that probably won't let you down at the end of the day. And I think that's just going to be absolutely massive. And at the end of the day, we're not trying to win a league title. We just need a couple of wins. And if he can be the man, if you say, oh, well, we might have won this game if he had done this, or that game if he had done that, all we need is for him to pick us up 3 or 4 points and hope other guys chip in as well, and we'll be absolutely fine. We just need him to have 1 or 2 big moments between now and the end of the season. And I think you could look back and say, geez, thank God that he was reintegrated back into the team, because he was absolutely crucial in, I don't know, the Nottingham Forest game and the Sunderland away game that really were the ones that ended up keeping us up in the end. So fingers crossed he can sort of get that tune out of Tel and get him back into the team.
Yeah,
it's another example, though, in my opinion, of football slowly eating itself, because it's so results driven and very mechanical now. You can't see, Ferguson. Sorry to keep hawking on about times well gone past, but the Premier League was different then, and I can't remember accurately, and I'm sure I'll be readily corrected. But didn't Ronaldo have at least a season, if not 2, where he was incredibly wasteful, but understood to be a talent? And they had the space and the money to do that, to leave him for 2 seasons or whatever length of time it was. It was certainly a season where he did something every now and again, but a lot of it was wasteful, very, very wasteful. And then he became the superstar that he is under United's watch because he was allowed to develop. He was allowed to play as a young man coming through against other, fellow manly professionals. There's no space for anyone to come through and do that anymore. And even more so in our predicament where we absolutely need results.
Well, that's the thing, at United, they didn't rely on him to win games. That they could have had players all over the park that could have won the game. At Tottenham, the demand on these youngsters to basically come in and start winning us games, almost drag the team by the scruff to get us over the line.
It's too much.
It is too much on them. But look, Mathys Tel is a player that I was disgusted by his performance in the Europa Super Cup final. I thought he came on, showed poor attitude, refusing to close down and didn't show a lot of movement. And off the back of it, I did say I thought he'd be dropped from the Champions League squad because of it. And subsequently he was. But, he's a player that I've actually really come to like over the course of this season. He's shown fight in the face of adversity. He hasn't given up. He hasn't thrown his toys out the pram. He hasn't looked to get out of this football club, in general. He sort of just put his head down and worked hard. But I think there also has to be a fair question around it. Why is Frank and Tudor looking at this guy more as an impact substitution rather than starting? What are they seeing that we're not seeing? I think that begs that question. But where we are at right now, I think Tudor has to use him. I think, he's a player, to Jack's point, he's young. A lot of young players play without fear. And I think we need that in our forward line right now. He got on the ball against Fulham and he wanted to make things happen. He didn't want to take the easy route out like we've seen Gallagher do or other players do. Just pass responsibility on someone else. He took the responsibility on his own, and for me, we need that right now. And he just injects something fresh. He wants to go at the opposition. He wants to make things happen. He wants to get the ball going the other way rather than, just recycling it all the time. And for me, I think Tudor needs to capitalize on that right now, along with Sousa, another player who's young. His confidence isn't damaged. He'll come on, play without fear. Put the two of them down the left-hand side, and let's see if we can get them going, because if you can, it might just be enough to be able to score enough goals over the course of these last 11 games to be able to keep us up, because that's our biggest problem right now. We can all sit there and go, oh, clean sheets. We haven't been able to keep clean sheets in fucking donkey's years. But what we used to be able to do is outscore teams. And we're not doing that anymore. And that's a massive part of the reason why we are where we are. We need goals to be able to drag us out of this. So for me, he has to start Mathys Tel this game. If he doesn't, then you'd argue what effect is Tudor sort of trying to change? At the end of the day, if you're an interim guy coming in here and you're seeing players that are doing what you need them to do and are showing a bit of spark, you've got to play them. You can't just hold them back to be an impact sub all the time, because the reality is, Tudor's quotes there, I do get what he's saying in terms of the last 20 minutes when the opposition's tired. If you have a fresh injection of a player of Tel's like sort of pace and ability and stuff, he can almost change you a game. But the reality is we can't afford to sit there and wait to change the game in the final 20 minutes and use impact subs to change them, because we're always out of games by then. Yeah. So the reality is you have to start them. You have to go for these games from the start.
He can't make the same mistake that Thomas Frank continued to make. Thomas Frank, when even he was struggling to pick up wins, there would be one or two players that all of a sudden actually showed something that actually maybe got us back into the game or actually had a spark, showed some brightness. Then he would leave them on the bench the next game inexplainably. And he just can't do that here. Igor Tudor with Mathys Tel, or even, let's say, a Sousa, someone like even a Richarlison who ended up scoring a goal. Whoever is showing literally an ounce of anything positive for the team, you have to throw them in, because you have to take advantage of whatever might be in there for them, whether it's confidence or just a bit of bravery. You need to use whichever guys are actually showing you something. You can't just blindly play the guys that are putting in stinker after stinker after stinker. So that's what Thomas Frank did as well. So Igor Tudor has to avoid the same mistake.
Well, if you don't, Jack, how do you expect to get other players to perform or up their level of performances if you're not playing the players that are performing? Like under Frank, Sarr was phenomenal. Pre-season, start of the season, dropped him. No explanation why. Paulinho is our best midfielder this season. He dropped him for a run of 5, 6, 7 games. No one knows why. And he's done that countless of times with other players in the team as well. As soon as they start performing, he dropped them. So then it sort of leaves you in a situation. Everyone else is looking at it and going, well, if I do perform, I'm going to be dropped. So what's the incentive for me to really raise my levels? So he can't afford to get into that situation. He has to play the players that are willing to show the energy to fight, the fitness levels that he's looking for out there, that he's come in and preached about, and play them. Because if not, he's going to lose the dressing room. He will lose the dressing room.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, here, everybody, if you can, smash the like button for us, please. And if as we're reaching the hour mark at any point, if you want to throw in your questions or your comments about anything that you think we might be missing, welcome to do so in the live chat, or welcome to do so as a super chat to support the channel. We're going to move on here, though, to just a bit of funniness from Yves Bissouma, talking about needing to turn things around and also needing the fan base. He said, "We will start with the game that's coming. We will need everyone for it, every fan, because this is really important, especially when we are at home. We will need the fans. We need them. We have always needed them. I think the next game will be the game. It's time to start changing things." From Bissouma's words here, Dave, do you have any confidence hearing Bissouma's words that the Palace game is going to be the one where we turn things around?
Honestly, I'm sick and tired of the copy and paste rhetoric from everyone inside the club, whether it's the manager, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the fucking owners, whether it's Lange, whether it's the players. Every single week, we need you, the fans, we need you. Every single one of us are going to be watching the game tomorrow night, and none of us have missed a game this season. So I don't want to hear it. We're still here. We're still turning up. It's absolutely just copy and paste bullshit all the time to try and, I don't know what it is, whether it's to try and make us feel included in it or something like that. I'm sick of it. Just worry about what you're doing inside and do the best what you can so that we can get results, so that we don't have to be in this situation. And if you'd done that, you wouldn't be calling. You wouldn't have the need to call for fans to get on site. We'd already be on site. It's magic, that, isn't it? So I'm fucking sick of it. I'm absolutely sick to death of it. I'm here every game this season. Just shut up and concentrate on improving on the football pitch. Sick of the rhetoric. It's bullshit.
And Jack, just the final question for you, because I do know we probably need to keep it closer to a tighter hour. Anything that you've been encouraged by Bissouma's words there, saying we need the fans and that he says this is the game that will turn things around?
I think, in fairness, the fans have been very good there actually recently. I was kind of understanding but also critical of some of the stuff earlier on the season. I was at the North London derby. The fans were right behind the team up until that fourth goal went in, and every single person walked out of the stadium. Didn't boo, just left the stadium, to be honest. I was in the away end at Old Trafford when we went down to 10 men. I thought the away end there was absolutely brilliant from lads I know that were in the away end against Fulham. The away end got right behind the team and were absolutely brilliant on Sunday. So I think the fans have been behind the team, and I think these sort of puff pieces, they just go out. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But one thing I will say about him is he frustrates the life out of me. But he's actually been the closest thing we've had to a competent midfielder recently, which shows the predicament we're in. He's someone that has that sort of bravery, crossed with a level of unbelievable stupidity at the same time, and often is extremely lazy out of possession. But I think you've seen he's actually made himself undroppable despite his flaws because of how poor our midfield are in possession. And I think someone like him, who's maybe, I know there were some situations on Sunday where he maybe was kind of not even reactive, whatever the opposite of proactive is. He was non-existent. He was just sort of strolling around the place. But he's sort of like Ndombele, where when the ball comes to his feet, he does come to life a little bit. And I think that's something we really do lack. And if you put him beside someone like Sarr, who will do his running for him, I don't want to see Gallagher and Paulinho in the team at the moment. The two of them drove me insane on Sunday with some of the things they did. And they had that little circle where I think Gallagher passed it to Dragusin, who passed it sideways to Paulinho, who then booted the ball up in the air inside our own half. And I think that summed those guys up. And I think Bassoum was kind of the opposite of that. He might not have the right attitude, but I think he has that bit of quality on the ball. And I think just get him motivated and just tell him the crowd will get behind him. I don't care what you have to say to him. I think he is someone who will actually prove to be fairly important over these 3 or 4 games. So if he performs, he can say whatever he likes coming out in the media. All I care about is his performances on the pitch, because we really need to see that Bassouma we saw in those sort of first 7 or 8 games under Ange and in the Europa League final over these next even 3 or 4 games until Bergvall and I'm trying to think who else is out injured, but whoever's coming back till Bergvall's back. If we can just see something out of Bassouma, that would be absolutely massive. I couldn't care less what he has to say in the media, though.
The only thing is, though, Jack, you can't let him do whatever he likes. He'll just go on a big balloon binge.
Oh,
At
yeah.
the end of do you know what annoys me about it, though? This guy's calling for the fans. The fans have been calling for this guy to get off balloons all season and get on the football pitch and make a fucking impact. It's ironic.
That's what I was going to say. I was waiting for an opportunity. I couldn't agree with you more. With it, like it's complete and utter rubbish to say we can't change the outcome of a game at all. They're the only ones that can change it. So asking for the fans is deflection. Please don't boo me in another sentence. That's what it is.
Yeah. Sounds like he hasn't inspired anybody to run through a brick wall, Basuma, with his comments there, to be fair.
Maybe a balloon arch.
Yeah, maybe run through some balloons. Yeah. Just going to take this from Beto, and then we'll wrap up here. By the way, Beto, it's usually Wednesday or Monday. It just kind of depends on Dave and I's availability and schedules. We did have it on Monday, of course, after the Fulham game. And it's all about, just trying to get everyone's voices heard. So we apologize that we weren't able to have you, but hopefully we can get you next week. And then thoughts on Richie and Dom's striking partnership. Dave and I are going to release a predicted lineup for you tomorrow. So I encourage you to check that out because we have sneakily gone for, don't want to spoil things too much, but we have tried to work Richarlison into the lineup just since he is the goal scoring man at the minute. And we'll see how the other players end up lining up in that predicted lineup. But appreciate you, by the way, Beto, and appreciate anybody that's been here with us tonight. Thank you as always. Smash the like button, please, on the way out. And we'll see you all tomorrow for the massive game. An absolutely must needed 3 points. Please, Spurs, just do us this one favor. And then also as well, just for the guys like Colin and Jack, do thank them for coming on because how many losses have they had to try to dissect and try to understand and
don't blame us.
They need a break.
Better circumstances. We can talk about wins next year.
We're torturing them at this stage. So please, Spurs, can you do them a favor? And please, everybody, do thank them for giving up time out of their respective evenings. But we will see you all tomorrow, everybody. As always, come on, you Spurs. And in the Igor we trust. Like Beto said there.